I am Deepali Patil. I am a doctor by profession. I have done my post-graduation in transfusion medicine, and I have also done my diploma in craniosacral therapy, and I'm a practicing doctor and a craniosacral therapist. Today I'm going to talk to you a session on health and wellness. I welcome you all for the session. There's a lot of information which is available on health and wellness everywhere. Like in the magazines, TV, social media. And we also gather so many tips from our friends, family members, neighbors, including our doctors who have, to tell us a lot of things. And many a times what happens, we forget many of them. And sometimes we don't even follow some of them. And sometimes we don't know what is the logic behind some. And in the end, we usually land up just getting some information and not following many, just a few maybe. And most of the tips that we follow only for a very short time. And we'll end up saying it is ineffective. So today I'll be talking mostly out of my experience and most of the things that I have been following in my life. I went onto this path because for a long time, I had a few health challenges. Mainly, I was hypothyroid and I was suffering from irritable bowel syndrome for some time. And this disrupted my lifestyle tremendously. And this led me to search and research different ways to move back and forth. And the idea was to get to better health. Thus, all that I'm sharing today is not all related to my subject of profession, that is allopathy, but many of it has its roots in Ayurveda, naturopathy, and even osteopathy. So before we begin, what is the definition of health? We all understand that if I am disease-free, that means I am healthy. But according to WHO, World Health Organization, the definition of health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just absence of disease or infirmity. So we have this concept in our mind that if I'm not seeing a doctor, that means I am very healthy. Or if I'm not taking medicines, that I am very healthy. Being healthy is not only a disease-free body, but much more than that. Where our mind complex and our social behavior is also well and functioning to its best. Usually, we as individuals and also when we visit a doctor, we are trained to look for disease, what is wrong. We have to shift our outlook from looking to what is wrong to looking for health. We have to start looking for health. First of all, we have to understand that this body is not existing as a single entity, just by a body itself. We have various other levels of our existence, like our breath and our mind complex. The mind complex includes the intellect, the memory. So this body is basically a supreme machine which will run or function only if there is breath, right? And the breath is regulated by the software that is the mind complex. Here I'm not talking about the brain. Brain is also, I'm considering as a part of the body because it is physical. But what gives body life is breath, and it is extremely important. And what regulates our breath and life is the mind complex. This body and mind complex is extremely intelligent. Okay, very intelligent. The proof is that we were just 2 cells and we have become into this, 60, 80 kilos of body weight. but it has its rules, do's and don'ts. We have to be aware of these rules, and if we play by them, we will remain truly healthy for a very long time in all the levels of our existence. In today's world, all that we are paying attention is to our body, and we are aware only of our body. We take care of our body, we eat, we clean it up, we dress well, we sleep. Sleep also is a part of taking care of our body. But we are completely unaware of our breath. I think you agree with me. And our mind, intellect, memory. We pay very little attention to the requirements of the breath and the mind complex. If we pay attention to the requirements of the breath, it will take us a long way in keeping us truly healthy. Before we start getting into each of these entities, I would like to talk little bit about the importance of the biological clock, or the circadian rhythm, as we call it medically. The biological clock is nothing but the natural process that regulates everything in our body. It regulates, every 24 hours, the system is inbuilt to regulate it. So what does it regulate? Our sleep pattern, our thirst, our waking up, the temperature, the blood pressure, digestion, heartbeat, appetite, the bowel movements, everything is regulated by this biological clock. Even the muscle coordination, even our moods, feelings, behavior, and finally all this will become, affect our productivity or our performance on a daily basis. One of the major, the trigger, which maintains the biological clock is the sunlight. So when we talk of any activity to keep us healthy, we have to consider the biological clock, which is based on the sunlight. This is very important. Okay. So sun plays a major role in our biological clock, and to maintain the biological clock, we do so many activities which have to be based on the sunlight. In fact, this biological clock sets itself in our system in the first few months after we are born. That's why, at birth, after few months, the babies are, not sleeping well, not sleeping in the night, not taking feeds on time. All this takes a little time to set in. So our biological clock sets in after birth, few months after birth. This is also the same reason why we get a jet lag when we are traveling through different travel zones. One of the easiest and the most important things we can do to remain healthy is to just follow the biological clock. Even animals have a biological clock, and those, staying in the North Pole, South Pole, where, 6 months it is day and 6 months it is night, they are not able to have this biological clock until the sunlight. So they do not follow the rhythm, because the rhythm is being followed only when the sun, according to the sunlight. We'll talk about the biological clock in detail a little later. But now I would like to go into the care of our body. Because we spoke about body, breath, mind, intellect, memory, right? So let us start with what do we do to take care of our body? Few tips. When we are talking about the body, we will look into the three main aspects. One is the food, the sleep, and the exercise. It is said that what you eat is what you are, right? It is actually literally true. It's like whatever we eat, that is becoming our body. It's becoming our cells. It's becoming our tissues and our organs, right? It's very true. So before we start getting into these, now let us start about the food part. This is a major thing, because what we eat is what we are. So let us look into the quality, quantity. Quality of food is important, quantity of food is important. And of course, the time of the food intake is very important. We have to understand that basically food is a source of energy. And when we say it's a source of energy, we have to clearly understand that it provides energy not only to the body, but also to the mind, which we forget many times. When we say it energizes, it gives energy, we think it's only energizing the body. It's also energizing the mind. When we speak of energy, there are two aspects. One is the strength or the muscular energy, which is given by the nutritional value of the food. And the other is the life force energy or the prana shakti. Usually when we go to a doctor or a dietitian or a nutritionist, most of the times everybody is talking about the calories, and how much more emphasize what I believe is more important, that is the life force energy behind food. Every food has a different life force energy. Some of them give us a positive life force energy. Some of them, very few, give us negative life force energy. And some of them give us a neutral life force energy. So all the greens, the veggies, they all give us positive life force energy. And potatoes and sweet potatoes, mushrooms. In fact, mushroom gives us negative life force energy and brinjal gives us negative life force energy. And few like potatoes give us, like which are roots and tubers, they give us neutral life force energy. So when I say life force energy, it is the kind of energy that is going to go to our mind, how we are going to start functioning and behaving. That is the life force energy. I feel in children, it is very important, the nutritional value, but as adults, the life force energy is more important to us. And this can be, and according to that, the foods can be divided into three categories. That is Rajasic, Tamasic, and Sattvic. When we say Rajasic, these are those foods which is giving us, creating the restless energy in our body and mind. Restlessness. We have seen people, they sit, they'll go on clicking the pen, or they keep the foot on the other foot and just go on moving it. That is a restlessness. Some foods like spicy food, chilies, garlic, tea, coffee, caffeine in any form like chocolates, they would give us Rajasic energy. The second type is the Tamasic energy. These are those foods which will cause inertia or lethargy in the body and the mind. So such foods, examples would be onion, frozen food, stale food, fried food, heavy food like sweets, desserts, non-vegetarian food, bakery products, where this maida, refined flour and yeast, this combination happens, bakery products, or any ready-to-eat foods that we have, those 2-minute Maggies, cereal, all those things. So they are going to give us that energy which is going to make our mind and body lethargic and have inertia. And the third category of foods is the Sattvic food. That's going to create a positive lightness and an enthusiastic energy in the body and mind. So what food falls in this category is any freshly cooked vegetarian food is Sattvic. If it goes in the fridge, if it goes into the freezer, then it becomes Tamasic. That is a little bit about the quality I was talking about. Quality of food is also important. We spoke a little bit about quality. Now I want to talk about the quantity of food. It's very important. To give us that Sattvic energy, it has to be just sufficient to fill up our stomach. When we first feel full, that is when we have to stop. not continue till the tongue feels satisfied, which we, most of the times we do. Ideally, half our stomach has to be filled with food, 1/4 with water, and 1/4 has to remain empty, so that good digestion happens. What is meant by good digestion? That when it digests, it is completely digested and absorption is to the maximum. So some, tips about what can lead to better digestion. It would be some age-old traditions, but that is what really helps. If we sit down or if we sit with our feet folded, that helps because it will give us a feeling of when we are feeling full faster than when we are standing up. Okay. Eating with fingers, because tips of our fingers have nerve endings which are going to stimulate circulation and digestive fluids and make better digestion. That will help us to manage our weight better because we are aware of, it will regulate the amount of the portion of food that we are eating in some way or the other. So in a way, this standing buffets are not a great way to eat, especially for our body. It may be very nice for our tongue. We really enjoy it, the different variety of foods that are there. Now, when we talk about food, I include water into it also. So let us talk a little bit about water. It's the most important aspect. It's the elixir of life. We can stay a few days without eating food probably. We go on fast. But we cannot stay for a long time at all without water. All our organs will go into different kinds of shutdown. First important tip is always sit down and drink water. It is recommended to drink about 2.5 to 3.5 liters of fluids a day. That will include water and other fluids like tea, coffee, juices. But as per Ayurveda, depending on our body type, if we have high pitta and high vata, we need more water. And maybe a little less for the people who have high kapha. It is not ideal to drink large quantities of water at one time. It is better to sip water because though it may sound surprising, water also has to get digested. Digested in the sense get absorbed. Then only whatever water we drink is useful. Otherwise, it will just get passed out as urine. So if we drink large quantities of water at a time, mostly it gets passed out as urine. So sipping water throughout the day is a very good idea. Now, how to, couple of tips on which water is better digested. Boiled and cooled water is absorbed better by our body. And if we drink water immediately after food or before food, neither the water is absorbed, neither the food is digested. So keeping a gap of about 45 minutes to 1 hour before food and after food is a good idea. Now, that does not mean that you are very thirsty and you just absolutely don't take a sip of water. That's okay. But don't drink large quantities of water before and after food. During food, drinking water is okay, small quantities. We should not be drinking, that's a little bit about water. One more important thing is not to drink cold foods and cold water. No, that's really not good. Body temperature, room temperature is fine, but ice cold is not a good idea. When we're talking about food, before I go ahead, I will not talk into detail, but a little bit, about maybe 5 minutes, talk about non-vegetarian food. When we talk about non-vegetarian food, there is a lot of evidence which shows that our system, our body is not meant to take non-vegetarian food. A few examples I will give. We have an enzyme in our saliva, in the mouth, where maximum digestion happens. 70% of the digestion happens in our mouth, in the saliva. So we have an enzyme called as ptyalin, which digests the plant cells. And this is not present in carnivores, like lions, tigers. So all carnivores do not have this enzyme. And we have this enzyme. is one of the things which goes to say that our system is meant for vegetarian food. Second thing is our intestines are about 20 to 22 feet long. Okay, same like herbivores, other plant-eating animals. Whereas carnivores have intestines about 3 to 8 feet maximum, not more than that. So when we have such a large, long intestines, when we eat non-vegetarian food, it takes about 72 hours for the food to come out from the other end. So you can imagine what is happening to food in the 72 hours. It digests less and kind of rots more. There are other things, like one small example, I'll not go into details. Like herbivores, suck liquids or fluids, like cows, goats, same way we do it. मतलब हम चूसते हैं. But carnivores lap fluids, like cats, they use their tongue to take fluid inside. So this is, I think, grossly proof enough to show that, our system is not meant for non-vegetarian food. Apart from that, there's a lot of research which shows that eating non-vegetarian food is conclusively linked to two major diseases. This research done, many researches in fact, two major diseases. One is the heart disease and the second is many cancers. There are also some diseases which occur only when we eat non-vegetarian food. Like some parasitic infections and all. Now, what non-vegetarian food is doing to our mind and body is important, but other than that, very important is the major impact that eating non-vegetarian food is having on our environment first and on the economy second. It will be very surprising for some people to know, it might be shocking for some of you to know, that the second largest producer of the greenhouse gases on the planet is the meat industry, the first being hydroelectric projects and fossil fuel burning to create electricity. Okay. So second largest cause of greenhouse emission is the meat industry. We are so much worried about greenhouse gases. We are going for better, cars, better refrigerators, better ACs, all so many things that we are doing. But one of the nicest thing that each one of us could do by shifting over from meat-based diet to a plant-based diet. Now, why this is happening? Because to grow animals on factory farms and animal farms, it requires a lot of land to grow the food for them and also to keep them, to grow them specifically. Electricity is required, water is required, and after using, they grow and then they poop a lot when they're growing. This releases a lot of methane gases. It would be, surprising for some of you to know that to grow a plant-based diet, we require about 3,000 square feet of land. And to grow one meat-based diet, it takes about 7 acres of land. 1 acre is about 44,000 square feet of land. You can imagine the difference. So we are about, planting more trees, not causing deforestation. But one of the major reasons why deforestation is happening is for the meat industry to grow. Also, about 60% of the land that is, agriculturable land that is present on this planet, we are growing food, grains. 60% of it is being utilized for animals and not for human beings. So when we shift over, our carbon or ecological footprint will reduce drastically to half. Meat-based diet is also a big drain on the economy. I spoke so much about what it is causing to an environment and also to our economy. Briefly, I will talk about this. If you look at, the ratio of how much money is being spent to grow an animal and how much money is being spent to buy a meat product. It is very much imbalanced. The amount spent, the money spent to grow an animal is much more than the amount that we are buying it at. So when there is so much disparity, that the loss difference in the cost, it shows that this is going where? This is going to subsidy to the meat industry. And what does subsidy mean in short? It means funds are being diverted from important things like roads, electricity, and other necessity for us. So it's a big drain on the economy, which is not a well-known fact because meat industry is a big lobby. Like tobacco is a big lobby, right? Same way. And they're very powerful. Now going back, I would not like to speak more about non-vegetarian food. That should be sufficient, I think. The impact that it has on our body and our mind, on the environment, and on the economy. Going back, to food, we spoke about the quantity of food, the quality of food. I would like to touch briefly upon the timings, which are very important. Now here comes the circadian rhythm or the biological clock, which is very important, when to eat. Our body is made up of 5 elements, that is earth, water, air, fire, and space. At different times of the day, depending on the sun, the different elements in our body will activate the various different parts of the brain, especially the hypothalamus, a part of the brain called as the hypothalamus, which regulates the biological clock. And this in turn will affect the various aspects of our body, like the blood pressure, the hunger, thirst, temperature, sleep, bowel movements. And all these will also cause different changes in our behavior and moods. So basically, the biological clock is affecting different aspects, and that will cause when we should eat the food. So ideal is to eat the food when the fire element is high in the body. Okay, so that the digestion is best and absorption is complete. So when does this happen? The best timings for food would be like, around 9 o'clock breakfast, before 10, before 2 o'clock lunch, and before 8 p.m. dinner. There's one hormone in the body called as melatonin. Hormone is like a chemical which is, thrown into the blood and which goes through the entire body. So melatonin is a hormone which is responsible for the, sleep cycle. So it starts being released at around 9 o'clock in the night and starts, reduction of the hormone starts happening at around 8, by 8 o'clock in the morning. It gets completed, the reduction. So if we have, breakfast before that, a little after it stops and little before it starts being circulated in the body in the night, it would be best digested. That's, a small tip. And unlike what is generally believed, lunch should be our biggest meal because that's, the fire element is the highest at that time and we can digest our food the best. Breakfast can be, the second largest meal and the dinner should be the smallest meal of the day. We spoke a lot about food. Now the second aspect which affects our body is the sleep. Sleep is a very important source of energy to the body and the mind. So the quality of sleep and the quantity of sleep and the timings of sleep, again, are all three important. So quantity is about 6 to 8 hours in an adult. Okay, maybe in children it will be slightly more. The quality of sleep is also very important. The quality generally will depend on how you feel when you get up. If you're feeling fresh and refreshed, that means you have had a good night of sleep. The few factors which could help, improve the quality of sleep, which I have adopted because I was suffering from insomnia for a long time. And this has really helped me, that there should be no sleep during the daytime. It's very important. We can have a short nap uh, or, like a meditation, maybe something like that, or a power nap, 10 minutes to 20 minutes, not more than that. One aspect, no sleep in the daytime. Second point is have dinner by 8 o'clock. No, not later than that, maybe maximum by 9. Because what happens when we eat dinner, all the blood circulation moves towards the intestines and it delays the release of the melatonin, that is the sleep hormone in the body. Third aspect which has helped me is, and there's a lot of research which shows that the blue light that we have in our homes, that's the white tube lights, and all the lights on our screens, that's the mobile, television, laptops, all these delay the release of melatonin. So very important to get off the screen or the blue light or white light, what we call, by around 9 or 9:30, maximum by 10. Very difficult because we are used to this pattern that, by 10 o'clock when everything is done, then we, start our mobile business or social media business. But ideal would be to be off by 9, 9:30 or 10. And it would be very nice to use yellow lights at home, warm lights. Because somehow, our brain is wired since millions of years when there were no electricity, before electricity times, to fire. When evening comes, fire and that yellow light. So it somehow has that memory that yellow lights mean sleep, in simple words. So if we have yellow lights, that's, great for sleeping better in the evening. In fact, when I learned this, I attended a sleep seminar and learned this, and we changed almost all the lights in my home. Fourth aspect is, if any one of us is suffering from insomnia, that is, you cannot sleep in the night, and you suddenly wake up, it's not a good idea to, just toss and turn in the bed. It would be better we just get up and move from that area where we sleep to a neutral area, like, a dining room or a hall, and, spend time there until we are, ready to sleep. Because the more time we spend in the room where we are going to sleep and not able to sleep, that environment does no longer have that effect of sleep on us. It's better to move from that area. Last thing, very simple, but it helps a lot. Just put on some soft music and read before you go to sleep. The last thing would be nice to read and not be on the screen again. And this has, helped me a lot to, improve my sleep. The timings of sleep, the third aspect. We spoke about quantity, the quality, how to improve the quality. Now, timings of sleep. By 10 is the most ideal. Because after that, again in the night, we have the fire element rising up. So I have also noticed it is my experience that if I delay 10 to maybe 11 is fine, but more than that, then I don't get sleep to 12 or 1, because the fire element rises up in the body and it does not allow us to sleep. So just before the fire element is the water element, which will increase the sleep pattern, more deep sleep. I have spoken quite a bit, in depth about food and sleep, because this is where, we as a community are doing things incorrectly for the past decade or so, collectively, all of us together. It's become a culture. And we have reached to a point today where it is, almost become compulsory for us to recognize this, deficiencies that we have in our food and sleep patterns and start taking corrective measures for it at the earliest. Another noteworthy point is that all these, tips or aspects that I spoke about are very much doable. It's just a decision away. And after the decision is taken, a little bit persistence to make the change in the habits, and then it will lead to a lifestyle modification eventually. Next, we move on to, after food and sleep, is the exercise aspect, which is very important, responsible for the health of our body. Exercise is a compulsory thing, But again, here we have to understand that moderation is very important, middle path. If we haven't been exercising, all our life, and we suddenly start jogging for 45 minutes or an hour, or decide to run a half marathon or a full marathon, let's take our time. But best is the middle path. A moderation is the most ideal thing for most of us. Too much or too little would not be, very ideal. Too much will exhaust us, and too little is going to cause trouble in the body. Some jogging, walking, cycling, anything that moves our legs is a great exercise. One thing I would like to, put emphasis on is stretching. So stretching would include some yoga, some asanas, or maybe, aqua aerobics or TRX, or anything which stretches our body is very important. Why, I will tell you, because other than the circulatory system, we have a blood circulatory system, blood is moving in the body. Along with that, we have a lymphatic system. For some of you, it will be very new, lymphatic system. So where lymph is moved. So what is lymph? Lymph is that fluid which takes all the unwanted debris, collects everything that is unwanted from the body and takes it back. So now I am talking about this. There's a little difference between the circulatory system and lymphatic system. Main difference is the circulatory system has the heart, which is a pump. So the circulation is being helped by the pumping of the heart. Whereas the lymphatic system does not have a pump. Okay, so when we stand or when we lie down, right from the tip of our toes to the top of the head, all the fluid which is collecting all the unwanted things has to move to the heart again. So how will it do this? By the muscles everywhere. We have muscles, right? Snayu jo bolte hain. So muscles act as the pump at different levels of our body. The calf being a big pump for moving the lymph. And lymphatic system is a part of the immune system, the resistance power we call. So it's a part of the resistance power system in our body. So we have to, it is very important and maybe at present urgent, to see that our lymphatic system is functioning to its optimum. And we can help by moving our muscles. So movement is one, and stretching is a very important thing. What stretching does is that there is a covering over every muscle, not only muscle, every organ of our body is covered with a thin sheet, like a thin curtain, very thin, see-through curtain. We call it as the fascia or the fascia. So only when we do stretching, something unique happens. The fascia relaxes and the muscle contracts. Okay, and that is what is very important to move the lymph. Okay. So we do some exercise like half an hour, 45 minutes or whatever I said, cycling, jogging, walking, running. Be cardiovascular exercise. But today I would like to highly recommend two simple things which we can do, especially in a lockdown, and semi-lockdown maybe in some areas, and full lockdown in most of the areas in the world. Two things which will improve our cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. One is just marching on the spot. Just lift your feet up to the knee level and swing your arms completely and march. Very simple thing to do, but marching for about 10 to 15 minutes, you'd be surprised, will make you sweat as if you have been jogging for maybe 5 kilometers. You can try this. So marching, one. And second is the Surya Namaskar, very age-old, set of asanas or yoga, which has lot of importance during this period. So there are 12 steps in the Surya Namaskar. Each step activates a specific endocrine gland in our body, and it gives complete stretch to the body, which, as I said earlier, which relaxes the fascia and contracts the muscle. This action will automatically move the lymph and the lymphatic system, which is very important during, as a resistance power. Surya Namaskars usually are done in the morning. We have to learn the Surya Namaskar the right way. We have many videos on YouTube to show us the 12 steps and the right method. Breathing during Surya Namaskar is very important. Taking in the breath and breathing out at every step is very important, not just the posture of the body. And we can do Surya Namaskars at 2 speeds. One is the fast and one is the slow. Fast speeds are, will burn down our calories very greatly. In fact, you can, it is known to burn down calories more than jogging. Fast Surya Namaskars. It will build strength in the body. Very resilient. It will improve our immunity system. And slow Surya Namaskars, because it has to be alternated with slow and fast. Slow Surya Namaskars are very good for the mind. It will improve the strength of our mind, resilience of our mind. It's a great way to keep in shape. It will improve our metabolism, helps us to lose weight and maintain it. There are a lot of celebrities now who do Surya Namaskars on a regular basis. There's Rekha, Aishwarya Rai, a lot of people who are tuned to doing Surya Namaskars. We can do Surya Namaskars in 12 or multiples of 12 to a maximum of 108, not more than that. Okay. So slowly we have to go. Every week increase by 12. Do every day 12 for a week, then next week increase to 24, like that. Very slow we have to increase. But it's a great way to keep in shape, especially during these times. And it has an all-round effect. So many effects. Other benefits of Surya Namaskars would be it will improve our digestion. It will improve our immunity, as I said earlier. It improves our skin a lot. Skin and hair. So it's a great way to not to go out and, keep yourself in good shape. But good part or bad part, we have to do it in the morning. Not a good thing to do in the evening. Of course you can, but best is to do in the mornings because it's Surya Namaskar, sun salutations as it is called. Last thing about, exercise I would like to mention that Surya Namaskars, after Surya Namaskars immediately, it's best to take rest. Very important to take rest for about 5 to 10 minutes. Because body has worked a lot, but our nervous system needs to relax. That's very important. Now, we spoke a lot about the body, food, exercise, and sleep. Now, I want to address to the second level of our existence, which I spoke at the beginning, that is the breath. Very important. It is so important that without breath, no life, right? But we are so less aware of this. Till I say breath, we are not aware of our breath. Usually we become aware of our breath, only when we are doing some physical activity, correct? Another important thing about breath is what? That 90% of the toxins in our body which are produced, waste products, are thrown out through the breath. Okay, about 10% goes out through urine, through stools, sweat, and 90% through the breath. For the simple fact that usually, on a daily basis, 1 to 2 kilos of food we take, everybody. Okay, maybe 3 to 4 liters of water or fluids. But we take about 10,000 liters of air in our body every day. So much just by its sheer quantity, it is the one which is throwing out 90% of the toxins in our body. Okay. So we have to, pay a little attention to this breath. Though 90% of toxins are being thrown out through the body through the breath, but usually on a daily basis or on average human being adult, we utilize only 30 to 35% or 45% of our lung capacity. Okay. Even the best of athletes utilize about 45% of their lung capacity, not more than that. So we have to do something which will increase our lung capacity. So we know that exercising or athletics is not going to increase. It is going to increase only to 40, 45 or maximum 50%. But there is so much which we are not utilizing. So one of the things that breathing exercises which help us to improve our lung capacity is the pranayams. Okay, which is taught by in our ancient culture. So it will increase our life force energy. There's a lot of medical research done in various medical universities like NIMHANS in Bangalore, AIIMS in Delhi, Oslo University, and even Stanford, which shows that, which has proven that certain pranayams and certain breathing exercises increase our lung capacity from 70% to up to 95%. Okay, so this lockdown is a great time to learn certain pranayams and certain breathing exercises which will improve our lung capacity, because 90% of our toxins are being thrown out through the breath. Now, I would want to move on to the next level. We spoke about the breath, okay? Body, breath, and I also spoke about the mind, right? Yeah. So mind is the next level of our existence. It is just not mind, but it's a mind complex. So mind is one which is experiencing the entire world through the 5 senses. But what is the nature of the mind? Now that, we are here physically, but mind has been going in and out of this room, wherever we are sitting, yes or no? Yeah. So mind has this tendency to move in the past and the future. It's oscillating. Because of which we are hardly present in the present moment, very less. It happens, right? That's why many times what falls on our ears, what we see with our eyes, we don't hear or we don't see the person. It has happened, right, in the past. And this is what is actually causing the stress to us. What is stress? Is the mind not being present in the present moment all the time. That is stress, basically. If the mind is present in the present moment, like when we watch a very good movie, yeah, we don't think about the past and the future. Mind is present there. And that's why we feel completely relaxed. Yeah. So when his mind is not there in the present moment, that is when stress accumulates. And that itself is stress. One thing we have to understand, probably we would not have noticed it. Every emotion has a different breathing pattern. Okay. When we are angry, we have a breath which is fast and, forceful, like that. When we are very sad, we have a different breath. We are just, breathing out more, like that. When we are very happy, let's say you meet a, childhood friend suddenly walking in the market. So how do you go? Hi. So just incoming breath is more. So every breath has a different emotion. Every emotion has a different breathing pattern. If you understand that. Emotions are arising where? In the mind. Earlier, what we realized that we only notice our breath only when there's a change in the physical body. Yes or no? Like you climb up the stairs or you run to catch a train. Okay. Or when we have a nose block because of cold. Yeah. Or, get into a pool without knowing to swim. Yeah. All this is going to, help us become aware of our breath. So any change in the body, there's change in the breath. Any change in the mind, emotion, there's a change in the breath. Okay. So breath is what? Connecting the mind and the body. All right. So it's the link between the mind and the body. So if we want to be, more present in the present moment, if we tell our mind to be in the present moment, it's very difficult. How many times has the mind listened to you when you have told it to do something? Very little, right? Most of the times it does not. It questions you back why, right? So what we do, we use the breath, because breath is linking the mind and the body. So we use the breath to bring our mind to the present moment, okay? Or to control the mind, as we call it. Yeah. So the mind is like a kite, and the breath is like a dory, the rope. So if you want to change the direction of the kite, what do? We change the direction, we pull the string. So same way, different breathing patterns can invoke those kind of emotions. So if you want to be happy, if you breathe enough in the happy breath, European research shows now that we can become happy just by breathing in that fashion for sufficient amount of time. So that's the good news. So breathing exercises have been found to reduce stress. And there is research, which I said earlier, done in various medical universities, which also shows proof that stress hormones like cortisol are reducing, after such breathing exercises. And some relaxing hormones like endorphins and oxytocin have been found to increase after the pranayams or the breathing exercise. There has also been proof which shows that our vagus nerve, which is a very important nerve in the body, the dorsal part of the vagus nerve, which is responsible for our social bonding, social behavior, the feeling of belongingness that we have, all this it is responsible for. It gets activated when we do the pranayams or the breathing exercises. So we have to understand that one important side of the mind complex and the body is the breath. Okay. But very important, we have to understand this aspect, that there are different rules controlling it, the mind and the body. Okay. The language of the body is effort. It will be very healthy and more effective when we put it into action, the body. But the language of the mind is effortlessness. Okay. Or relaxation. The more relaxed we are, the better our mind will function. So this aspect we have to understand. But usually what we do, opposite. We give lot of comfort to our body. Okay. Don't move it at all sometimes. Take care with so many things. And absolute activity in the brain or in the mind. Okay. And that is a good formula to get stressed out. So we have to reverse this. Activity in the body automatically makes it tired and relaxes the mind to a certain level. And breathing the right way will definitely relax the mind and put us into a state of restful awareness. So what is this? In sleep, what is happening is we are completely unaware and we get rest. Right? And when we are awake, there's full awareness. So there's a state in between called as the restful awareness, which we come to a state when we do these breathing exercises. And what is this state? This restful awareness will make us very, very energized. A few minutes into this, in other words, you can call it meditation. That is restful awareness. So a few minutes of meditation is equivalent to few hours of sleep. So how do we go into this restful awareness state? Is through the breathing exercises or the pranayama. And one of the most effective tools has been found to be the Sudarshan Kriya, which is taught by the Art of Living programs. So I would, like almost end my talk. If there are any questions, I would like to take them. If there is sufficient time. Or, yes, and I would like to invite you at the end to come and join this online breath and meditation workshops, which will help you to learn the Sudarshan Kriya and lead us to the state of restful awareness and energize our mind and body. Okay, we have some questions in the chat box. Yeah, anybody wants to ask questions? Okay. There were a few things about the food which I wanted to talk about. So one thing is about, fruits and vegetables nowadays. They are with a lot of pesticides and insecticides. One of the simple tip to get rid of them is just soak them in water for about half an hour to 45 minutes with some baking soda. That's a very good thing to do. And if there are some greens and all, you would not like to put them in baking soda. So you could put them in some salt water for about 15 minutes. See, we spoke about, I didn't speak about the nutritional value of food. So some things I would like to touch upon. Some important minerals that our body requires are iron and calcium. So iron-rich sources, the day-to-day use items in India is like jaggery, spinach, dates, and beetroot. Very good source of energy. So if we take enough supplement, we don't have to go for, iron in hemoglobin increasing tablets, which a lot of people, especially women, are taking to increase their hemoglobin. Second is calcium. One of the richest source, I would always think it is milk and paneer, but I realized that 10 times higher is sesame seeds, till, which we call, 10 times higher. So sesame seeds, and the second highest is curry leaves, curry patta jo bolte hain. So sesame and jaggery laddus is a very good thing, iron and calcium. Though we say iron and calcium together will not be absorbed in the body as doctors, but which is present in natural foods is very well absorbed. And second is, since I learned that curry leaves are very good source of calcium, I stopped removing curry leaves from food. I started eating it. And another way, if you cannot take the curry leaves in food, you can just dry them and make a chutney like groundnut chutney. Just sprinkle in all the food that you're eating. Very good. Third important mineral is potassium. Banana is a very good source of potassium. And we have this saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but more appropriate would be a banana a day keeps the doctor away. Okay? So banana consumption is really good. We must always have the seasonal fruits that are available and not go for any exotic ones, especially which are grown in our locally. That's about fruits and vegetables. More colored fruits and vegetables will have a lot of antioxidants. So I'm sure many of you have heard about antioxidants. We should take them. So what are they? In short, they are just substances which prevent the damage which is caused by some toxins in the body. We call those toxins as free radicals. So these antioxidants stop the damage caused by free radicals. So any colored fruits and vegetables is a very good source of antioxidants, especially lemon. I would love to talk a little bit about, grains and seeds. Now, all the grains that are being grown are coming from seeds which are genetically modified. 95% of them. Almost everything, even fruits and vegetables, are grown from seeds which are genetically modified. So we must try and to procure more organic products which are not genetically modified and grown organically without usage of pesticides and insecticides. They are becoming, available more and more now of late. Of course, they are expensive, almost double the amount, but it is very important to go for this. I would want to explain why. Because long-term consumption of the inorganic food, fruits and vegetables and grains, which are sprayed with a lot of chemicals, is the main cause for various, the high rise in hormonal problems that we are having in the country, everywhere, especially thyroid, even early puberty in children. They get at a very early age, puberty. And, alarming increase in various different kinds of cancers. Like, almost like an epidemic. Every other person is getting a cancer. So few more reasons which are responsible for this, three things: hormonal imbalance and puberty, early puberty, and cancers. Few more things are the adulterated milk and oil. We have to shift to desi cow milk, cow milk, and especially to the desi cow, that indigenous Indian cow. We have to start using the cow ghee because it is very medicinal in our diet on a day-to-day basis. It has mainly tremendous health benefits. And we have to get out of this concept that eating ghee, is going to cause me weight gain or, going to become obese. It's completely wrong. So these few things we have to change about milk and ghee. And then I spoke about oils, very important aspect, because we use vegetable oil so much in our food, in our cooking. And many of us are not aware. And even if we are aware, we don't know what to do, what is the exact thing. So in very short, we have to use filtered oil or cold pressed oil and not refined oil. So anything that says refined, please don't use. Go for filtered or cold pressed oil. Okay. So in filtered oil or cold pressed oil, 2-3 oils are very good: sunflower oil and safflower oil, or kardi ka tel, which we call, traditionally. Safflower and sunflower, very good oils. And another 2-3 oils: coconut oil, groundnut oil, very good. We should be shifting oils. We can go on rotating between, and mustard oil. Groundnut oil, mustard oil, and coconut oil, very good. So we can shift between these 3 oils. And please do not reheat oil, for deep frying. Once used, you can just use it for other cooking and finish it off. Like, for your rotis and, tadka, but don't deep fry it again. Okay. So what is that which is very, not good in the refined oils? There is, when we say refined, there's a huge way it is being refined in, but very shortly I would like to tell, when it is heated in very high temperatures, the oil, and a lot of chemicals are added to it, which are really toxic. So these 2 things go against, using refined oils. And it causes production of some toxins called as PUFAs, polyoxy unsaturated fatty acids. So let's not use those because of that. So oil is one very important thing. We have to start using cold pressed or filtered oil. And very important, what I have realized in all this is that when the demand increases, when the need increases, automatically supply increases. So as we start looking for more and more, automatically supply happens. The shift happens of the people who are producing the yield, from inorganic to organic. It may be expensive, that is also a concern, fact of concern, but we can spend little less on our outdoor foods, eating out, on our clothes, on the various, we have so much clothes which are not required, and less on our gadgets, and we could spend on that. That's really a healthy choice to do, because it's going to go a long way to keep our mind and body healthy. And last important, I would like to touch little bit upon millets, usage of various grains. A lot of now research shows that using millets in our day-to-day life is a very good thing. So what are millets? Millets are, those indigenous grains which are available. They could be different to different countries. All right. So jowar is a very good millet which is available in our country, especially, this part of India, Maharashtra, Karnataka. So that's a very good thing to eat. So why millets are being given so much importance is that they are very rich in fiber. many things are there, but the gist of it is they're very good in fiber, very high content of fiber. So using millets is very good thing on a daily basis, but we have to keep some things in mind. Just use one millet, at a time. Don't mix the millets because absorption does not happen. One millet at a time is a good idea. And the very last thing I want to speak about, is cereal and muesli that we have for breakfast, and so rampantly used for our children. We give, if there's nothing, just give muesli and this. So I would like to, it is highly recommended not to eat them. Dr. A.T. Still, Andrew Taylor Still, he's called as the father of osteopathy. More than 100 years ago, made some research and stated that daily consumption of muesli is a very good, leads to a very good chance of causing irritable bowel syndrome. And so many of us are suffering with irritable bowel syndrome now. So let us not go into that. There's a lot of research done on various things that I spoke, and many proofs and evidences available, but it is beyond the scope of the talk today. So we can get at a later date into that on a personal chat. And I think I would like to end my chat, my talk with this. There are some people who want to ask some questions.
Yeah, there are some questions in the chat box, Didi.
Okay, I'll look into that, and somebody's raising hands. Milk and fruits is not a good idea. Only 2 fruits as per Ayurveda, whatever I know, can be mixed. Milk and so milk with mango is one. And there are 2-3 more fruits like custard apple and banana can be mixed. But if you are having kapha prakriti, then it's not a good idea because it will increase kapha a lot. Okay. So fruit salad also is not a good idea. But anyway, all that I spoke, I want to say once again, once in a while is okay. It's not like if you have once in a while milk with banana or a milkshake or a smoothie, next thing you're going to land up in congestion of the chest, nothing like that. So everything that we spoke about, once in a while, it's okay. It's not a big deal. But we should know what we are heading for, what is going to happen, what might happen. Okay. So ignorance is not good. Knowledge is very good, but go with, once in a while is okay. Yes. Okay, yeah, fruits before food is a good idea. Okay, never fruits after food, because the time required for digestion of different foods is different. Like fruits require just maybe half an hour to 45 minutes. Milk requires about 4 hours. Water also requires 4 to 6 hours. Which it's difficult to understand. That is how it is. And roti, sabzi, dal, chawal will require about 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. So if you mix, if you eat fruits after your food, then it is not going to get digested. It's just going to get mixed up and you're not going to get any goodness of the fruits that you have eaten. So always eat fruits before food. And not a good idea to eat fruits after dinner. It's a very good thing to eat fruits in the morning. The morning is a very good time to eat fruits. Yeah, okay, best vessels to cook food in. I did some research and I landed up with this thing. Non-stick is a very bad idea. Don't use non-stick cookware at all. That germanium and hindallium is a very bad idea. I just threw everything that I had of that metal out of the kitchen. What is a good idea is metal is actually cast iron. Cast iron vessels are very good. And steel. Steel is very good. It has to be good quality steel. Steel is one of the best to clean and cook. And the second best, and even cast iron is the same. Cast iron and steel are at the same level. The second best would be, you have those, I'm forgetting the name, hard anodized. Hard anodized would be a good one. But you have to keep watch when the layers come out. So if the layers really come out, you just have to stop using it. Hard anodized like Futura is a very good cooking option, second best. Okay.
Anand, you
Okay.
had a question.
Lactose intolerance, you can go for soya milk. Those who have lactose intolerance. Something about milk I want to speak a little bit. Curds is a very good thing to have in the morning, buttermilk in the afternoon, and milk at night. Okay, that is what is recommended. The very good things to do. Yes. Yeah. Anant, you want to speak something?
Yeah, I had one question. Morning 4 to 6 is the hours when people go out for a routine walk, followed by some pranayam, because this is the right time to have the breathing exercises. I
Yes.
just want to know whether we first do the physical activity, have a small shavasana, then go for pranayam, and how it is.
Yes, it is like that.
What would
First physical activity and then breathing exercise.
okay?
Like then pranayam.
Right.
Yeah, first physical activity, then breathing, then pranayam or meditation or whatever you're doing.
Right.
That's the sequence. Yes. Okay, thank you very much. It was good interacting with everybody. Thanks a lot.